So, Jackie, last Sunday, you hosted an episode where you turned the table on me and interviewed me about the journey to caught up to FI. Yes, recently I found out I was FI. I was suddenly FI. It was a bit of a shock.
You came out?
Yeah, you did a great job leading me through the journey. You are one of the 5 people near to me that are near and dear that make me a better person. So I was very impressed with how you addressed it, but people may not know the origin of that story. And that goes all the way back 3 years to episode 1, A Boat Named YOLO. It's been a long time coming, Jackie.
Yeah, that was the birth of Catching Up to FI. And now you, as the poster child of Catching Up to FI, the founder of the Catching Up to FI movement, openly shared his story. And folks, if you haven't listened to that, Bill revealed and talked about some things that he's never talked about before. He's very vulnerable. So Bill, you made it very, very easy. And it was almost like watching a movie. I was so curious. It's like watching a movie where you can actually ask the actors questions. So it was so much fun. They say you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. You are one of those people. I'm a better person for it as well. But I loved episode number 1 where you were not in the best place. You were getting there. You had made all these changes, but you talked about all the grimy, gritty path that you were on, paycheck to paycheck. And you just admitted a lot of things in that episode. And we thought it was worth playing back again so you can get to know Bill Yount before he reached FI. It was not pretty. So I'm appreciative that you shared so much.
Yeah, I mean, that first episode was all about all the mistakes I made and the things that I wanted to get right. But guess what? The 3 years since then, I've made a bunch more mistakes too. But I've recovered. We are resilient. We are powerful. We are late starters. And we all will catch up to FI together. So I encourage you to go back, listen to part 2, I guess, after you've listened to this episode. And I've got to do the same. Let's see how the 2 jive as sequels. The movie is ongoing. We'll do part 3, 4, and 5 because the journey does not end. It is ongoing.
It does not. We're all catching up to FI together. And Bill, I think it's so meaningful that both of us were late starters. You carried this audience with you as you were going through your journey, as you're learning new things. We're having on guests, you're doing all this research. And so you were transforming and still transforming in front of all of us. So let's take a look. Let's do a flashback to, was it 2023?
2023, February 19th, the very first episode dropped on that date.
Yeah, so another little nugget to commemorate the 3-year anniversary of Catching Up to FI.
Yeah, it's kind of like Back to the Future, isn't it?
It kind of is.
I'm going to go listen to it and see what I said.
Yeah. A lot has happened since then.
All right. We'll see you this Sunday on Catching Up to FI. Welcome to Catching Up to FI, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to FI together.
Hi, and welcome to Catching Up to FI. I'm Becky, and I'm here with my co-host, Bill, for episode number 1. We are excited to be here and talk to you today. We are going to talk about our own stories today. So you're going to hear how both of us came late to the financial independence realization and what that meant to us and what we did after we woke up and realized we were in trouble. So welcome, Bill. It's good to be here with you today.
Becky, it's good to be here with you, my partner in crime.
That's right. Well, Bill, let's start out with you. Tell us just a little bit about who you are, and then let's jump into your story.
Okay. Well, I'm a practicing emergency physician. I'm 57 years old. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee with my lovely wife. We have 2 kids, twin boys who are 23. And I woke up to FI around age 49. It was a cold water plunge, and it's been a wild ride ever since.
I can imagine. I know what that felt like. Bill, tell me a little bit about your growing up? Like, what did money conversations or anything about money look like when you were younger?
Well, first of all, money was, as is often the case, taboo. It was not to be talked about. I grew up in a upper middle class family with a physician father who was a state employee, a nurse mother who was a stay-at-home mom after that. My dad was, let's say, frugal with money. We lived in a scarcity mindset. It seemed like there wasn't enough. There was a lot of arguments about money between my mother and my father. My mother was the spender, and he always accused her of spending too much. There was a lot of fighting. Ultimately, they got divorced, and money was a factor. And I worked a lot as a child because I felt the need to work because our family was not as well off as we really were. And so starting at 9 years old, I started working. But I did not have, or nor was I mentored to the mindset of saving, investing, giving, the 3 jars approach. I didn't get that. For me, earning money meant spending. And that was my concept of it. I was scared of it. I remember the biggest lesson I got about money was my dad did our taxes, and he would hibernate for about a month trying to scam the government for as much money as he could get back from them. He even got audited once. And so I was scared to death of taxes. I was scared to death of money. I didn't want to think about it. I did want to earn it, and I definitely wanted to spend it.
Wow. I'm curious, what did you do when you were 9 years old?
I was a camp counselor, and I worked with the 4-year-olds at summer camp at our tennis club, and I earned $5 a week.
Wow. Well, you were industrious, that's for sure.
Well, I never got to go to camp. I didn't get to be a child. I was in some ways parentified.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't honestly get the enjoyment at times. There was fun time. Don't get me wrong. It was not all bad. But the stress of money left me feeling the need to produce at a time when you really should be more of a kid.
Right. You didn't get to enjoy your childhood as you maybe could. So I'm assuming there were no conversations. There was no education. We all learn from the modeling that we see, whether it was good or bad. But it sounds like the modeling that you were exposed to, left you with some negative feelings about money.
I remember also that my parents had a piece of rental property, and my mom kind of ran it, and it was very stressful for them. It didn't go well. I remember my mom having an inheritance and my dad suggesting that she invest in Church's Fried Chicken, a food franchise. And I don't think that went very well.
Wow.
I remember my dad investing in Fidelity Magellan, one of the bigger mutual funds at the time that did really well for a long period. But I didn't know what mutual funds were. I didn't really know what stocks were. I didn't know what bonds were. I didn't know really anything. And that ignorance and financial illiteracy carried through until, honestly and sadly, till I was 49 or 50.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about your early career.
Well, I'm a physician, but I went to boarding school first, left my family to sort of escape some strife, came back home to college in North Carolina and did college and med school there. The best financial decision I ever made probably was to go to my state school for med school. Our audience will find it hard to believe, but at the time in North Carolina, education was highly subsidized, and my tuition to go to med school, the very first semester I went, was $500.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Wow.
The cost of going to med school at that time was the cost of living. And the tuition by the time I finished med school was $1,000 a term.
Wow. So you had an advantage there over anybody in school these days.
I didn't have the kind of mountainous debt that students in general come out with. That is financially incapacitating. They've shackled themselves unknowingly because they haven't learned how to deal with money. And they just, in our debt-ridden society where it's consumerism to the max, education is a consumption item. And it's like a credit card. These loans, you're giving out loans to 18-year-olds that have no idea, nor do their parents, honestly, probably, how to manage them.
Exactly. They go in thinking that they will have no problem taking care of it later.
It's all about later.
Mm. Well, and it was with us too.
Yeah. And I came out of med school with $30,000. No, actually, it was residency. At the end of the day, how much debt did I have at the end of my education? It was about $30,000, mostly of credit card debt.
Really?
Yep.
So was that just living expenses?
No, it was the fact that when I was in residency, I deserved to travel places.
Ah.
And the credit card, as we often have heard, was a means to an end. It was play money. I didn't realize I was taking a high interest loan.
Mhm.
I would roll my credit card amount to a zero balance card and then continually try and keep rolling it to keep the interest down and make no ends meet with paying it off. I would just keep rolling.
Interesting. So had you seen someone else do that?
I don't know that I did. I just think it was an easy means to an end.
Sure. Right. At that point in my life, I'm not sure I would have even understood that concept.
Well, I was paying the minimum
Mhm.
and I wanted to pay the minimum possible.
Right. And just keep rolling it. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Again, don't think about today. We'll just worry about that later.
Yep.
Yep.
And then luckily, when I came out of residency, you see an escalation of income pretty rapidly, and I was able to rapidly pay off that debt. It was my wife came into the marriage without any debt, so I was the one with debt.
I see. So what did your money roadmap look like in the first half of your life? What did handling money look like for you as you went through your early part of your career?
Well, the first real big boy paychecks I had were when I was a resident, right? Because I had lived off of loans during med school. And at the time, what you earned as a resident when I went through it in the 90s was $25,000 a year. And I lived in Chicago, but I managed to make ends meet on that by and large, except for the credit card debt I accumulated. So I did live beyond my means. But as far as the needs, they were in the wants were met elsewhere. So, and we would get $1,000 raise a year. And I didn't save anything. It was just a means to living. It was, on the Maslow's hierarchy of things, my shelter, my food, those needs were met, but there was no thoughts of putting money away in a Roth IRA. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what anything was.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then come out of residency and you get the first big paycheck, and then comes things like the new car and car payments. Then comes buying the new house later on when we had kids, and it rolled from there. The travel.
Right.
My wife and I are passionate about travel, and it was often and not necessarily cheap and on the down low.
So it sounds like you enjoyed life as you were spending money.
We made lots of memories. It wasn't all about things.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, we didn't pay much attention to the things. There was the clothes and the food, and in Chicago, the eating out and the entertainment, and you just didn't think about it. We lived the city life. It was an expensive life for sure.
So did you see, or I should say, while you were in this period of your life, did you look like everyone else around you? Did you look like your doctor friends?
We lived in sort of a doctor, higher income neighborhood in Chicago. And we weren't surrounded by doctors there, but I think so. I don't know for sure because work friends are not the same as personal friends. And again, doctors, we did not talk about money. It just wasn't a topic of conversation. I mean, somebody would talk about their stock tips and stuff at the water cooler, I guess, but I didn't care. And I barely knew what retirement accounts were. I knew that I should put something in it, but sadly, we were early on single digit savers, I like to say. We literally, it was again, we saved last. And that was exactly the opposite of what folks need to do. And it ended up being in the single digits. We didn't max out retirement accounts. I barely knew what they were. I didn't know, like I said, what mutual funds were. And we made the mistake of hiring a high cost advisor that was an advisor through a private bank that we banked at. It was totally wrong. Didn't know what that was. We just turned it over to folks who did not take care of us. And we did not take care of ourselves. We didn't even pay attention. It was like, they'll take care of it. Don't worry about it.
Right. Right.
It'll all be there when we need it, and we don't have to save that much because it's so far away.
Which I think does make you look like everyone around you. I mean, it's the typical American lifestyle of I'm going to worry about today and I'm not going to worry about tomorrow yet. I can deal with that later.
Well, and as we have both said, I think this is what I would call the silent majority. This is the traditional upbringing in our country that needs to change, needs to turn around. And that's what we want to do. We want to get this message out there so that people start earlier, wake up earlier, and learn to take care of, at the same time, their present and future selves.
Exactly. Bill, what was your aha moment? What was it that caused you to wake up from this 20-year slumber, as you've put it?
The slumber was also initiated by grounding a family. You come out of residency, you subscribe to lifestyle inflation, then you have kids, and then you become busy with that. And we had challenges in raising kids in particular. It was a lot of focus, and the focus wasn't on money. It was the last thing to think about. It was, let's just take care of our family, take care of experiences, completely ignorant of the rat race and lifestyle inflation and the hedonic treadmill, as we call it. And all of a sudden, it was 20 years later. Our kids were exiting the house. College was paid for, our mortgage. We hadn't established any significant home equity because we'd had some housing disasters we should probably talk about, because that's a big nut. That's one of the big rocks that you got to get right in life. But came out the other end of this child rearing phase of life, and we just kind of realized that nobody was taking care of us but ourselves, and we weren't anywhere near prepared for retirement. Why do you think we have the late contributions, the extra contributions to retirement in the 50s? It should be the other way around. We can contribute more as we're younger, but our system's kind of geared towards catching up in your 50s.
So tell us about the road from here to there is rarely a straight line. There's always bumps along the way for anyone, even people who are handling their money well. We all have challenges. And it sounds like that the housing issue was a challenge for you. Tell us about your housing.
Well, we were passionate about housing. We bought an old 100-year-old home. We didn't pay any attention at all to whatever capital expenditures needed to go into the house. We didn't really pay attention to mortgage or financing. It was a means to an end. We just didn't focus on it. It was what it was. And back in the day, I think we bought our first house for $462,000, which was a first home. And about 6 years later, as is often the case, as families upsize in sort of three phases, I think, at 6 years, at 12 years, and at 18 years, it's sort of, the house seems to grow. And we moved out and rehabbed our home in 2007.
What timing?
Yeah, we basically rebuilt the house. It started out as a paint job, and it turned into a gut rehab.
Contractor loved you.
Yeah, and we didn't pay any attention to how it was going to get paid for, because at that time, money was cheap, and that was the housing boom right prior to the bust. And as soon as it busts, we were upside down, and that was not a fun place to be. We saw a significant equity drop, and we were stuck. We couldn't do anything except live. And in about 6 years after that, the housing market had recovered. Chicago was nearing its end for us because our kids were going into high school, and we wanted to slow down the pace of life. We had literally gotten so caught up in the rat race, we were getting exhausted. And the biggest mistake we made, probably bar none, was not only that did we rehab the house and end up upside down, which made us house poor, and we can talk about what that means. But basically, you're paying a significant portion of your income for the roof over your head, and leaves you with nothing else to save. And that's happened to us at a time when the market dropped dramatically in the Great Recession, and we got scared, and we de-risked our portfolio to predominantly bonds and low level of stocks. So we were house poor, de-risked, and poor savers. Those three things during the great bull market in the last 10, 12 years was a horrible combination. and left us with, if we'd have just gotten a few things right then, we'd have been much better off at 50, but we got everything wrong and did it all at the same time. So housing played a big role in that, being scared and not understanding the stock market, not understanding its volatility was a problem. And then not being savers was a big problem. And I think that's not necessarily an uncommon story.
No, I think it's very common, at least with our generation. I think so. It was like the perfect storm of timing of events for you between the house and the stock market and what you and I have in common, which was just not paying attention.
And then we didn't learn our lesson then. We did some, it's kind of, again, we unintentionally geo-arbitrage from Chicago to Tennessee, which was financially a great decision, but it wasn't because of finances. I didn't know what geo-arbitrage was, which is basically increasing the gap by reducing your cost of living by living somewhere where it's cheaper to live. Taxes in Cook County in Illinois were very high. Property taxes were high, and everything got better when we came to Tennessee. And we didn't at that point realize what we had done, but it was a good move. Absolutely.
Right.
But
did that solve your problems?
No, we built another house.
So you went from house poor to another house poor?
Yeah, we didn't realize how risky our approach to life was. We had no concept of risk. And a lot of finance is recognizing and managing your own risk profile. So yeah, we built another house. My wife and I needed a nest for our kids who were going into high school. And that became the Big Doctor house in the Big Dr. Jones oriented neighborhood. Did we love it? We loved our house in Chicago. It was a beautiful home. We thought it was our passion project and a home forever. But as we know, about every 7 years, people move on average. And we thought we'd be there forever. We weren't, nor were we in our house that we built in the suburban neighborhood where we now live for only 6 or 7 years. And finally, about 2016, we recognized what was going on. We got control of our finances. We downsized our house shortly thereafter, about 3 or 4 years ago. And that in itself was very painful. Physically, emotionally, financially, it's so hard to deflate once you've inflated.
Right. It's the mechanics of it. And it's also a lot of emotional turmoil. So take me back just a little bit. Tell me, what was your aha moment? What was it when did you realize that this is not going well and that something's got to change?
I wish I could remember what exactly caused the light bulb to go off. I know I must have looked at our accounts and recognized that, wow, we are not where we need to be. And we don't have any control over this. We've abdicated control to others, and it hasn't gotten us where we want to go. It just didn't happen by accident.
Yeah.
We were completely unintentional. And then I read a book by William Bernstein that was The Intelligent Asset Allocator, and it took off from there. Then I went down the rabbit hole. I read everything, dozens of books, dozens of blogs, listened to podcasts. But I found myself in a bit of analysis paralysis. I was scared to take over. It seemed intimidating to take over. It seemed like, and I'd procrastinated it, which is what analysis paralysis really is. So it still took me a while. I woke up, but it still took me a year or two to take over and become a DIYer.
And, after hearing your money story from childhood, I could see how that would happen, because your approach and what you had seen growing up around money, at least, was negative. And you saw people that had sort of not paid attention. And I think that's part of where what landed you and I in the place where we were, is just not paying attention, not thinking about the future. You think about that and realize, I don't understand it. I don't know what to do with it. So I'm just going to stick my head in the sand for today, and I'll worry about that tomorrow.
Well, my father, who was the financial CFO of our family, didn't try. It wasn't even important to him to educate us on money. I also refer to myself as part of the lost generation. I'm on the border of Boomer and Gen X. And during that time, 401ks came online. No idea what it was. During that time, Bogle came online with his low-cost index fund. no idea what that was. Didn't get told that. And it self-perpetuated.
Right, right. So how did you feel about that when you sort of wake up and realize I haven't been paying attention and I'm in a place now where I've got to do something?
First there was the breakdown. And then, as we all know, there was shame, regret, remorse, all the what ifs. But that doesn't do any good. I think it's a natural part of waking up, but you got to get past that.
Right.
And you got to start where you are, as we all well know, and start now. If 20 years ago was the best time to plant a tree, as they say, the second best time is now.
Exactly.
Your money tree. And we just started. It felt good. The first phase of it was very energizing, eye-opening, enlightening, exciting. And you're learning something new. Then I got excited about sharing it with others because it seemed like this isn't a message that other people are getting too. And I started a Facebook group because my family got tired of hearing about it. And they wanted to just say, you talk to somebody else about this. And I was lecture daddy. It's hard to be a lecturer in this regard because people aren't going to take that information in. They have to be ready. And you have to kind of catch them at a weak moment where they're like, have that same kind of wake up and are looking for help. And that's what we're trying to do here, I think.
Yes, yes. And it is energizing when you start to learn what to do with what you have. Process of trying to handle your money, for me at least, was so daunting, and I just felt so behind in what I needed to know. And when you do start learning, you do get energized with it, I think, and excited about, now I know that I can do something positive with this.
Yeah. And then right now I'm in the middle, and I refer to the first phase as being at the beginning of the tunnel. And then the middle phase is the darkest part of the tunnel. It's hard because you're watching folks around you who have paid attention to their money reach time freedom. You're watching people be financially independent, and you are working the plan. You have to, pause, plan, and pivot. And once you've done all that, it's not like it just happens magically. And you get into some magical thinking where it's like, okay, now that I've done this, it'll just happen. Well, there's a lot of work involved. Put off the work. And you don't have the advantage of the time compounding of money. It leads to the need to do more and save more aggressively and have a much higher savings rate, as I'm sure we'll talk about in our podcast, among many other things. But it's hard. We had to basically go from single digit savers to 40, 50% of our income. Now, one thing we should address up front is we were both very fortunate, I think, and we'll talk about that in your story as well. But I'm a high income professional. I have a big shovel along with my wife, who is now full-time employed. It was more part-time when we were raising our kids. So we have the means to make up the difference. But remember, we live at a higher lifestyle. So there's a spend rate that we have to not see a decrease in lifestyle, which is similar for everybody. We share that challenge. Everybody's at a different level of lifestyle. So the tools we're going to share and the mindsets we're going to share apply to anybody at any stage and at any income level. And so even though you and I both have had bigger shovels to catch up, we had to catch up to a different point.
Right. And when you were talking with Doc G on the Earn and Invest podcast, I heard you talk about backloading. And to go from where we were of instability to a place of financial stability, it does take work. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes some sacrifice. And I think that's part of what that sacrifice is that since we did not front load the effort, now we have to backload.
And there's advantages and disadvantages to that. Don't have regrets of a lot of the experiences we have in life. We, front loaded the experience side, and we didn't start experiencing things later after we frugaled down and got where we wanted to go with time freedom. We experienced things along the way, and I have no regrets there. There were great trips, a lot of time spent with the kids, a lot of wonderful memories. And, we paid for those, but we front loaded those, and we're back loading retirement. So it is what it is.
Right.
Backloading is hard. It's probably harder than front loading. Wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
No, I wouldn't either. I'm curious, Bill, when you had this turnaround, was your wife on board what you felt like you needed to do? Or was she in the same place with you of now we need to do something different?
Great question. Very important question for all folks with partners.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, she was excited to see that I woke up. She's a big picture person, and I'm more the organizational force, and she's more the let's live in the present, but yes, plan for the future. And I became more let's get to the future and downsize our present. But she's been very supportive. She's gone to conferences with me. She has read some of the same things, has listened to a few podcasts, but she still, like a lot of relationships, turns too much of the finances over to me. It's a little imposing because if I were to die, I would worry that she'd be able to manage it without help. And part of our plan is that I have a financial planner that she'd have to contact to really help her. That's just that's the backup plan. That's the plan B. She would learn because she'd have to, but because I do it, she doesn't really have to, even though she's supportive.
That topic that I hope we get to in the future of making sure that spouses are on the same page and that there is a plan left behind when something happens to the first spouse. That's something that we happen to be walking through right now with a family member of trying to make sure that all the papers are in place and that the instructions are there for whoever is left behind. But that's a topic for another day. So you talked about downsizing your house and that it was painful. But let me ask you, now that you have done that, do you feel like you're missing anything? Do you feel like you're being deprived, or do you feel deprivation in your life now that you have skinnied down your level of cost of living and that you are now putting more into savings and setting things aside and setting them up so that you have a better future? Do you feel deprived now?
That is an excellent question. And the fascinating answer to that is no. We went from, like I said, single digit savers to very quickly, say 40%. It varies a little bit year to year, but 40% was the goal. And we've reached that goal. Our lifestyle changed very little. It was amazing. Couldn't believe it. I was shocked. We still travel. We live a little smaller. Maybe we go out to eat a little less. We were very fortunate. And I was amazed. It didn't change much at all.
We experienced the same thing. I was surprised at how little my life actually changed when I started doing things correctly.
Yeah, it was amazing how the money just flowed through the sieve of life. And once we turned off the drain, it was more abundant. I've actually downsized my career too. I've taken a pay cut in order to stave off the specter of burnout, which we'll have to talk about at some point, because financial freedom is probably the best antidote to burnout. And in order to I have to work longer. And in order to do so, I had to work less and take a pay cut. So it prolongs the runway to retirement, but it allows me to work longer. So there is sort of a crossover point there. And I'm very fortunate that my wife scaled up to full time. And honestly, we didn't see a major degradation of income. And again, we maintained our lifestyle and increased our savings.
Interesting. So you have more time freedom now than you used to. And are you at a point where you're feeling some financial freedom? Do you feel like you have, even though you haven't arrived at retirement yet, do you feel the freedom of knowing where it's all going?
Well, the goal is 63, or the window is 63 to 65. That's about 6 years away, which seems really short. They say that the days are long and the years go by fast, and that's absolutely true. It speeds up as you get older. It really, really does. Seems like it's forever when you're in your 20s and 30s. And now I really respect time, and I respect the power of money in buying you time, which is what it's all about, really. No, I don't feel deprivation. We're not yet to the light at the end of the tunnel, but I am much more optimistic than I was. I'm a little bit less scarcity mindset. I still struggle with that. That's just my genetic and environmental makeup. You can't completely change that. but I'm much more forgiving, accepting, and optimistic than I've ever been. And I didn't know, like I said, ignorance was bliss. It was like Rip Van Winkle. I was asleep at the wheel, almost crashed, and woke up after 20 years. But it felt so good to wake up. It feels so good to know that we're on a path to taking care of ourselves in our later years. And we're not sacrificing experience now in order to do so. One of the biggest worries I have, honestly, is what do I do with my time after retirement? And what does that mean? And one of the reasons we're here on this podcast is this is something I hope to be doing.
That's right. That's right. And, that is another topic that we can address in the future. I am retired, and it is definitely, that is a process in itself. And so that's a topic that I'm going to be excited to talk about, is what I call the soft side of retirement. Once you've got your numbers in place, then the time, the purpose, your hobbies, your passions, there's a lot that goes into that besides just the spreadsheets.
Part scares me, actually, which is why I am respectful and grateful for the structure of work now and the transition to passion projects or different work or whatever it may be, volunteering, nonprofit work. That, as Fritz from Retirement Manifesto says, you've got to plan for that, as well as the safe withdrawal rate of your finances. You have to transition your human capital into maybe a different kind of capital.
That's right. And it's not really something that most people have spent much time thinking about before they get to that retirement date. It can sort of blindside you. And so thinking about it ahead of time is definitely, it makes the transition smoother. Bill, I wanted to ask you just a couple of big questions. At this point in time, are you debt free?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't tell you how good that feels. We are very fortunate to be debt free and not have those bills, not be paying interest for the right to have a house, a debt free home. People talk about leverage and investing the money to make up the difference. And that's not me as much. I don't want to go into retirement with a mortgage. It took us until a few years ago to be debt free. It would have been nice to have been that sooner and be more prudent with it, but we weren't good at building home equity. So cars are paid off. The boat is gone.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the boat. It's a funny story, actually. Not only did we build a house down here when we came down in 2013, we built it in a neighborhood that was a boating community, and we bought a slip and bought a boat. The name of the boat was YOLO.
Yep. You only live once.
Yeah. And the smart financial move and all that was my wife said, we're not buying a house in this or building a house in this neighborhood without buying a slip, because the slips were scarce and the houses were plentiful. And the gains in the slip, it doubled in value in 6 years. And it basically paid for the entire cost of owning a boat. So it wasn't the complete hole in the water into which you pour money. And as we both know, happiest days of a boat owner are the first day and the last day.
Oh my goodness. All right.
You had a boat too.
I did. Yes. Yes. We'll talk about that. I did have a boat. In fact, I missed my boat. So if you could give someone who is waking up like we did, they wake up and they think, oh my goodness, what have I been doing? And what do I do now? What would be your first tip for someone in that position?
Get help. Ask for help. Find a mentor. You can't do it alone. And you're going to feel like you're the only one that did this. And you can be your own mentor and go down that rabbit hole. And I tend to do that too much. But this community that we're in are full of helpers. It's amazing. Once you get involved here, the best part about it is meeting the people, and they're very generous with their knowledge and their time. So get help. After that, educate yourself. Stop the leaks as fast as you can. Find out where you are. If you don't know what net worth is, calculate your net worth. It'll be shocking, but it's okay. You know where to start. And then from there, there's really a very standard action plan. Gone over it in your blog. We have a guest in the future that will take us through the initial action plan. So I don't want to go down that road right now. But yeah, to reiterate my answer to your question, it would be get help and then educate yourself. It doesn't take much. It takes reading a couple of books, listening to a couple of podcasts, and you'll be on your way. Don't let, you can get 80% of the gains from 20% of the effort. I believe that's called Pareto's principle. If I got that right, maybe I got it backwards. But it doesn't take much effort to gain a lot.
Right.
It's intimidating. The initial learning curve is intimidating. The industry tries to make finances complicated and think you can't do it yourself. What I've learned is keep it simple. It's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. And I'm referring to myself. Initially, I made it complicated. I wanted to have 10 funds and forward rebalance, and we'll talk about this stuff, but it was exhausting. And that was another one of the mistakes I made early on when I transitioned to owning my own finances. But eventually I ended up with a relatively simple portfolio where I'm just like, it's got to be easy if I'm going to DIY it, because I don't want to think about it. I don't want to spend too much time thinking about it.
Right. And do you have a financial advisor right now?
No,
So,
I do not.
so you're handling it all yourself.
Yeah, the accumulation phase is easy. It's relatively easy once you get your plan in place. I do plan on engaging a financial advisor in a few years for a retirement readiness checkup. And in order to transition to decumulation, I will probably engage an advisor to help us with that transition at that time and teach me how to deaccumulate, where I've known it's hard to spend once you've been saving, and creating your own paycheck is intimidating to me.
Right.
And I'm going to want some help with that. Yes, I can read up on it and I can understand the language, but I really think that I will engage an advisor at that point.
And you just made a comment about the language. That's something that I wanted to bring up is when you get into doing your own finances and learning about them, there is a vocabulary that goes with that. But none of this is intimidating. I'm like, if I can do this, then anybody can. You just have to get a little bit of education. And like you said, the people in the financial independence community, the people who have written the books, the blogs, the podcasts, the live events that we've gone to, the more time I spend in this community and the more people I meet, the more I realize that there are so many people out there that are just willing to help, and for no gain of their own. They're just there to help you get on track with your finances because they've been there, done that. And that's why you and I want to do this podcast, is to help people get things turned around, to get on the right path and not walk through that same pain that you and I.
Well, like much of education, finance is a foreign language, and we don't teach it in school. We teach French, we teach German, we teach math, we teach English, but why don't we teach finance? It is a vocabulary. It's a language. It's a grammar. It's rules. It's not complicated at the end of the day. And everybody needs to learn this foreign language.
Right. And I want to reiterate something that you said, and that is the financial industry wants to make this appear complicated and that you can't do it yourself. You have to have help from someone else. And I'm not saying you shouldn't get help from a financial advisor. That is the right move for some people, and for some people it's not. But just don't be intimidated by the fact that the industry wants you to think that there's no way you can do this on your own.
Yeah, buyer has to be aware though too. Not all financial advisors are created equal, and we'll talk about the kind of financial advisor you want to engage, because that's important if you do so. And I think 80% of people do so, and that's fine.
Well, let me back up and ask this question first. Do you think that our situation is more common, or do you think you and I are the outliers?
Oh, we're by far the more common situation. Absolutely. Okay. We are the silent generation, as I said before. It is the way most people grow up in our country. We hear all the success stories in the community, and there are a lot of them, but they're intimidating because that's the 20%. I think we're the 80%. And there are people out there that just work until they die. And that's not fair. That's really not fair.
I agree. And one of the things that I think is deadly in our culture is comparison. You made a comment in your article about your story that was published on
Humble Dollar, I think it was.
Yes, thank you. Yes. You made a comment in your article that was published on Humble Dollar of the Joneses may appear rich, but they probably aren't wealthy. And I think that that comparison is deadly. We all look at the people around us and think, why can't we have that? Why don't we look like that? Why is life so easy for them when it's not for us? And you don't know what's going on in their life, for one thing. Lots and lots of people who appear wealthy are in credit card debt up to their eyeballs. Now, I'm not saying everyone that you see is like this, but I just want people to understand that just because something looks nice and new and shiny doesn't mean that it's the best choice.
No, you got to get your values, your wants, your needs all straight. And as a kid, I didn't get my needs and wants straight. Everything was, and just didn't figure out my value system financially. It feels good. It feels healthy. Financial health is a really important thing. I mean, remember, I'm a doctor and I learned how to take care of people's medical health, their emergencies. Well, I had a financial emergency. You can't go to a financial ER. I guess you can, but it became an emergency. And I didn't learn how to take care of my own financial health, which is an important part of the health spectrum, whether it be weight loss, weight gain, physical health, mental health, emotional health, financial health is part of that. And you can't neglect it. You can't ignore it. And we're here not to do that.
Right, right. And now that you are headed in the right direction, I would imagine that all of those things coming together are that everything has improved. Your mental health, your emotional health, your relationships with the people in your family and your circle of friends. It's amazing how far reaching having your money under control can get.
It's an important tool. It's only a tool, but it is an important tool to balance your life. Right. We were living an unbalanced, high-risk life and can't be the norm. Let's change that.
That's right. That's right. And we don't want our money to control us. We want to be in a position where we're controlling it because, as you said, money is just a tool.
Well, we'll talk about that.
That's right.
It's great to get this started. I'm looking forward to kicking off this podcast. I think we'll have to talk about your story next time because we've exhausted an hour and we want to try and stick to that. Excited about this. We're looking forward to guests similar to us. We're looking forward to talking to people that can educate us. And we're looking forward to talking about topics that are pertinent to us. Late starters can happen anytime. You can feel late at any time. I think we're trying to talk to people in their late 30s, 40s to get them started then, as opposed to waiting till 50, 55. If you start by 40, you can retire early. I mean, that is just the truth.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. And Bill, if someone wants to find you, where can they contact you?
Well, we're developing a website called catchinguptofi.com. It isn't quite live yet, but it will be. That will be a place to reach us. Right now, you can reach me through the Facebook group Financial Literacy Project, which I started a few years back and has about 2,000 members, some of whom are significant influencers. There's a place to ask questions. It's a place to get your questions answered. It's a place to share information that you think is pertinent to financial literacy. Anybody can join. We welcome anybody and everybody to come and join us. The other place, and we just started this, is a Facebook group called Catching Up to FI. It's specifically for folk who are in our small, it's growing, but we're looking forward to posting our podcast there and on your site. We'll talk about all your information, I guess, next time, but you're a big advocate of this space and you've got a lot of things out there for people like us, and I look forward to talking about them.
Great, great. Well, this has been so enjoyable. I've really enjoyed finding out about your story, and we will see you next time on Catching Up to FI.
We will. Look forward to it, Becky.
Me too.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. And our editor is Fritz Brazard. We love them and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie. I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptofi.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services, because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to FI. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to FI. Cheers.